Abby Lowell. He says that the grand jury's refusal to indict Attorney General James is a decisive rejection of a case that they believe should never have existed in the first place. This should be the end of the case if they continue undeterred by a court ruling and a grand jury's rejection of the charges. That would have been what happened today and what happened last week. It will be a shocking assault on the rule of law and a devastating blow to the integrity of our justice system. Of course, if James were to be charged again, she could always fight those charges in court and the whole way to trial. Aaron?
All right. Thank you very much, Caitlin. And Ryan Goodman, Jamal Simmons, S.E. Cupp join me now. Ryan, first of all, just the basic significance of this. It happened really quickly. Obviously, the original indictment ruled not okay because of Lindsay Halligan not actually being in the position of prosecutor. But the jury refusing to do this today, the grand jury. They had the time before. So what does it mean that it didn't clear the hurdle this time?
It's just an extraordinary moment in the sense that a grand jury not returning an indictment is on its own terms highly unusual.
Right.
We already knew from the first indictment that it was quite flimsy, to be frank. So the idea here is that it's that week that a grand jury doesn't even return an indictment. Were the government to try again and get one, they go back to square one in a certain sense. Then they're walking with an indictment that can work in court. But if any other jurors in an actual case get wind of that one way or another, the whole idea around it, the public consciousness, is that this is a very weak case.
I mean, it is pretty incredible, right? Because the Lindsay Halligan situation, her appointment, she had to charge James Comey or its statute of limitations hit, right? So they can't, re-bringing that one obviously is basically impossible. But the Letitia James case, they could bring again. Right? So they had this broader window to do this. But it sounds like what you're saying is that something gets so poisoned by a grand jury saying no, that really would lower the chances of any second try.
Lowers the chances, and one of her strongest defenses is that this is a vindictive prosecution. The fact that the grand jury did not return an indictment would strengthen it incredibly if they were to get a second indictment, because the argument behind vindictive prosecution, the paradigmatic case, is when the government either brings a flimsy case, so the fact that it was already rejected by a grand jury, or tries to re-indict somebody a third time. Right. That would be the hallmarks of vindictive prosecution. I'm not saying she'd win that, but it really strengthens her ability to win that argument.
Right, well, especially because prosecutors are supposed to only bring cases they really feel confident they can win.
Yeah.
And grand jury, I guess stating the obvious here, this would show that would be much less likely. Yeah. You know, Essie, this point about vindictive prosecution. I mean, Trump and Letitia James, there was a point where they were each other's main foil, okay? They don't like each other. But when it comes to Trump and selective prosecution, there's a lot to say. I mean, just let's listen to some of it.
The fascist and racist Attorney General of New York State, Letitia James.
You have an Attorney General who's a total stone cold crook in New York State. Letitia James, a total crook.
A crooked AG, Letitia James.
Letitia James from New York. This is another real Lola. There's no question about Letitia James, the corrupt Attorney General of New York.
All right, how significant is this blow to Trump? I mean, because you can't pull it out of, as Caitlin Pullins is talking about, the fraught environment at the DOJ, but the fraught environment in general after the elections in Virginia and New Jersey and after the Epstein vote and all of it, right?
I think this is both a story of incompetence and diminishing political capital. The incompetence in making a Lindsay Halligan, after several lawyers said, I'm not touching this, putting her in there, giving yourself really no good opportunity to win. That's to the incompetence side, and we're seeing that kind of throughout Trump's world. But the diminishing political capital is really astounding. There was a time when Trump could get up and say things like that, and by sheer will of force, it would seem like all the apparatus around him would bend and do what he said. Yeah. Now he's got prosecutors saying no. He's got people at the Pentagon saying, no, I won't do it, I'm resigning. He's got lawmakers saying, I'm resigning because I'm not going along with this. He's got people saying, I will not bury the Epstein files. I will not end the filibuster. Indiana state senators saying, I will not help you redistrict. The capital that this man once had, convincing Republicans to defend an insurrection at one point. Yeah. Now he can't even give them get them to do his basic bidding, the things he, did so powerfully in his first term. It's astonishing.
I mean, on the same day that you have a Republican, Thomas Massie, criticizing the Speaker of the House for being a rubber stamp for the president of their own party, right? Make it very clear that that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have heard that that was a bad thing a few months ago.
You would not. And just to paraphrase the president, these cases are garbage. I want them out of the justice system. I think they are wrecking the Justice Department. I think this is evidence that the system is developing the antibodies to this virus that Trump is putting into the American judicial system, that is using the political party that he controls to go out and target people individually. These are things that we've all tried to get away from ever since the Nixon era, that we said we're not going to do things like this anymore. Trump is trying to snatch us back, and we're all saying no. And you're even seeing it on the Hill, where Republicans in Congress are realizing that maybe their political future can't be saved by Donald Trump, because he will either attack them in the primary or ignore them in a general election and end their political career because he doesn't have the ability to save them anymore.
So then what is at stake in terms of their decision? I mean, can they quietly decide, Pam Bondi, you know what, let's let this go. Let's not try to bring another case against her because of what you're saying, because of what you're saying, the difficulty of, and the bruise that you would take if, again, a grand jury rejects it? Or do you have so much on the line that you got to do it?
If they go a third time and they get rejected, I think it's incredibly embarrassing. And think about the morale within the Justice Department. It would be crushing. It's not so crushing. Maybe they can just walk away from this. It's just a terrible dumpster fire that happened and not try again. Even if any prosecutors ever tried a second indictment after being rejected by a grand jury, it would raise problems within the Justice Department. I think they might just want to walk away.
Oh, well, so that would be, it would just not, it's not a thing.
Cut your losses.
Okay, so then, you know, Essie, does it spiral? I guess that's the real question. Does this continue to metastasize?
Yeah, in this current environment where we have new polling that shows many Americans believe the cost of living is as high as they have ever seen it right now. That was Trump's singular promise. In a landscape where the economy is not doing well, and even Trump voters are blaming him for it, all of this stuff matters a lot more than it would have normally. If the economy was great and singing, voters can compartmentalize. We've seen this over and over again. They've done that. They can compartmentalize the good and the bad. But in this environment with the tariffs and the DOGE cuts and the shutdown, people really hurting out there around the holidays, all of this stuff just looks much worse and much more chaotic and much more damning.
Yeah, Jamal, go ahead.
Well, you know it's not working. I was making light of it a minute ago. But what's not working is this attack on people like the Somalians and the Somali Americans.
The garbage that you're referring to.
Yeah, that joke. But these folks who are in Minnesota, who are people who immigrated here, they've come from a country that was having problems. They came to the United States to make a better life. People in Minnesota have given them the chance to make a better life, and it's all working really well for most of them. The question, though, is are we going to have an America where we welcome people or one that we don't? And I think that Trump is kind of setting us up for a society that so many of us just really don't want to be a part of.
In the context, Ryan, you know, that we have, there's been, the Trump administration will always sort of get first mover advantage. You can do something that people are going to say is against the law or extrajudicial, and you got to have someone's got to stop you, right? But you can take the first move. Does this affect that? A loss like this, and there's been several losses which haven't necessarily stopped them from doing things, but perhaps have slowed it a bit.
I think it slows the rate of change. It's one of the biggest problems that the Trump administration has had, that they're trying to go too fast, too quickly, and to be frank, by breaking the law. So that if they were to do it in a different way, I think they actually would have been able to accomplish much more of his policy goals. That's one part. But the grand juries rejecting them, I think is a different kind of concern for him. He cannot try to blame it on judges or politicized judges. These are a grand jury of of our peers that have done this, and they're not just
supposedly will indict a ham sandwich. Isn't that the famous line? Mm-hmm.
Yes,
grand jury will indict a ham sandwich.
Yes, and
but
it's
not
kind of
the
one
innocent attorney general, apparently.
Yeah, and grand juries are also rejecting these kinds of cases in the protest cases in D.C. and L.A. as well, which has got to be something of deep concern to the Justice Department because they need their credibility.
All right, and Letitia James has just responded. She just posted on X, time for the weaponization of our justice system to stop. The first response we're getting from her is to see whether she was shocked by this or not. And next, we have breaking news. We've got word of a new strike on an alleged drug boat. Okay, a new strike, and guess what? The administration is releasing that video, but they still have not released the video of the second strike on the boat back in September, at the heart of the whole controversy at the Pentagon tonight. Video that a few people saw today and called it disturbing. Plus mass confusion over what could be the biggest overhaul to
Make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels. Connected to your world.
Well, for the rescue team here, this really is a race against time. The village of Imi Dalla was among the hardest hit by the earthquake. This is the face of Israeli settler violence in the occupied West Bank.
Over the last 12 weeks, we have seen people taking to the streets in Paris in protest against these reforms.
Huge crowds have gathered here in Victoria to celebrate the release of Palestinian prisoners and detainees.
I'm Christy Lou Stout in Hong Kong, and this is CNN.
Yet another major defeat tonight in the president's campaign to put his former adversaries and perceived enemies behind bars. A federal grand jury has declined to re-indict New York's Attorney General Letitia James on mortgage fraud charges. That's according to a source familiar with the matter, and it is, by almost any measure, striking because federal prosecutors famously almost never fail to get the indictments they seek, in part because they're very particular about the cases they bring and especially well prepared traditionally when they do. In this case, however, a complete novice, Lindsay Halligan, handled it only to see the indictment she secured get tossed by a federal judge who ruled her appointment as U.S. Attorney for Virginia's Eastern District is unlawful. It was her first criminal case as a prosecutor, her first. Her most notable prior experience was working for a client named Donald Trump. Now, that judge also threw out the indictment of former FBI Director James Comey. Like Attorney General James, he's one of the president's openly stated targets for retribution via the criminal justice system. Now, something that he stated plainly in a social media post in September demanding that Attorney General Bondi prosecute, in his words, Comey, Adam Shifty Schiff, and Letitia, the last of whom won a civil fraud judgment against the president in 2023, earning her words like this from him ever since.
Attorney General of New York State, Letitia Peekaboo James. We have a racist Attorney General who's a horror show. She's got serious Trump derangement syndrome. This judge is a lunatic, and if you've ever watched him, and the Attorney General may be worse. Did you ever watch her? I will get Donald Trump. James ought to be looked at. You have an Attorney General who's a total stone cold crook, New York State. Letitia James, a total crook.
Well, now a grand jury has heard the evidence against her and said no. The question tonight, will the Justice Department try again? Joining us now, CNN senior legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Ellie Honig. Are you surprised by this, and do you think they will try again?
Yes and no. Am I surprised? Yes, I'm surprised because understand how hard it is for any federal prosecutor to walk into a grand jury and get rejected by the grand jury. It is a totally one-sided procedure.
I mean, it's the famous quote about the ham.
It's true. The ham sandwich is true for all the reasons you know. But no, I'm not surprised because the case against Letitia James was wafer thin. You're talking about an intended loss amount on this alleged mortgage fraud of $18,000, of which she only realized a few $1,000s. I never would have taken in, never did and never would have taken in a case with that small of stakes at the federal level. So this grand jury either rejected the evidence or they saw this for the political retribution it was, and they sent a message with this rejection.
Do you expect the Justice Department to try again?
So important to understand, they can. This is not like when a trial jury says not guilty, that's it. You can't try the case again. But you actually can try again with the grand jury. There's actually a rule in the Justice Manual, says you need all these high-level approvals because it's so rare that this happens. But the Justice Department, I was taught a lesson early on, which is pick your battles and cut your losses. They've now had the Letitia James indictment thrown out on the technical basis. You mentioned earlier, Lindsay Halligan, 10 days ago. Now again, they go into a grand jury. I mean, DOJ needs an intervention here. You're not going to send Letitia James to jail. This case has been rejected by judge and grand jury alike.
But I mean, I don't know if that, it's in a rational time, right, that would be the case. But given if the client is the President of the United States and you're the Attorney General, do you just do it anyway? And if that does happen, is there like malicious prosecution that Letitia James can claim?
Well, I've not seen any prior incident where Pam Bondi has said no to Donald Trump. Let's start with that. But that's also a good legal point. Let's say they go back next week, try again, and they get a grand jury to re-indict. Letitia James will then have a great argument for what we call vindictive prosecution, because what vindictive prosecution means is I, the defendant, beat you in court. I got the case thrown out, and now you're coming back at me even harder out of vindictiveness. So I think they're done. DOJ is done. I think this case is a dead end. I said last week it was circling the drain, and I think it's about to go down now.
All right, Ellie Honig, thanks. I want to discuss it tonight with journalist Gretchen Carlson, CNN political commentator Brad Todd, a Republican media consultant and strategist. And I want to note that Brad is an advisor to the campaign of the Republican candidate for New York Attorney General. So, Gretchen, does this suggest the president's push, do you think, for revenge is, at least in this case, losing some steam? Do you think the DOJ will try to retry?
Oh, I think 1,000% they're going to go at this again, because the person running the DOJ is President Trump. And this is something that he is incredibly behind. I mean, look, he wants to go after his political enemies at all costs. And we saw that he accidentally sent the email to Pam Bondi that was saying that this is what he wants to do. And in his mind, this is payback for himself being prosecuted before he was elected president again. So regardless of what the legal arguments are behind this, and Ellie Honig knows this better than anyone, I think the political argument here is that Donald Trump is not going to give up.
Brad, do you think there would be a third time at this?
Well, I think Letitia James hopes there's a third time. I think Letitia James wants nothing more than to be in a partisan fight with Donald Trump. When she first ran for Attorney General in 2018, she wasn't a prosecutor. She was a city council member. She was an elected partisan politician. And she said her decision to run was largely motivated by, quote, the man in the White House. And so I think that's exactly what she wants.
Do you think it's what the president wants?
Well, that's a question we'll see. I mean, again, depending on what the Department of Justice wants as well in the Southern District of, or Eastern District of Virginia, the prosecutors who are in that office. Letitia James, when a grand jury doesn't return a bill, it doesn't mean she's innocent. It doesn't mean that there's been any judgment of that at all. It just means that the prosecution did not make the case to satisfy this group of grand jurors. But this is one more time when Letitia James is spending a whole lot of time doing something besides fighting crime in New York. I mean, crime in New York's gone up 26% under her watch. But she's a politician, and this is the kind of fight she relishes.
But you're saying she's doing this instead of doing her job. She has to do this because she has been. I mean, they brought her to court.
She does.
I mean,
she does. But keep in mind, she poked this fight. She said she was running to get Donald Trump. Right. She said she was running because of that man in the White House. So this is the kind of fight she wants. She wants to pose him as her opponent and him as her enemy in all things.
Gretchen, how important?
That is the political talk. Now, this is the political talk this is quintessential Trump to spin the discussion back. Letitia James has had to invest time and investment and potential funds to represent herself in this case. This is not something that she wants at all. Neither did James Comey. So, and there were other prosecutors who would not take this case in the DOJ, who refused to take it, and that's how we ended up with Lindsay Halligan, who was thrown out as the attorney handling this because she wasn't qualified. So, I don't think that Letitia James really wants this. That is a political argument back about this.
Brad, do you have any concern that, that the Attorney General of the United States responds to a public message from the president directed to her saying, Pam, essentially go after Letitia James and Adam Schiff, and suddenly the Department of Justice does this? I mean, does that strike you as odd in any realm? And by the way, that message was then deleted. Clearly, when the president realized it wasn't privately sent, it was publicly sent.
I know there's a lot of pearl clutching about that, but you go back a few years, Eric Holder said he was going to be Barack Obama's wingman. Bobby Kennedy was John Kennedy's brother in the Attorney General's office. Merrick Garland went after conservative parents who were fighting in school boards and going to school boards to raise concerns about their kids after the White House responded to the teachers unions who complained about it in the School Board Association. The Attorney General is a political appointee. They've always served at the pleasure of the president, and they've always executed the president's policies and wishes with regard to the Justice Department.
Africa's trendsetters see how they use their talent, resources, and passion to make a difference on the continent. This is African Voices Changemakers.
With standout fashion and an undeniable presence on screen, Ebuka Obuyuchendu is inspiring young men to aim higher.
Being a part of changing things in whatever way I can is something I hope to do a lot more of.
African Voices Changemakers on CNN.
I'm Zain Asha, and this is CNN.
Out front next, breaking news, no go. A grand jury refuses to re-indict New York Attorney General Letitia James 10 days after a judge threw out Trump's DOJ case against her. It's a big development this hour. Plus, the video. Trump said he would release the video of the controversial second strike on an alleged drug boat, as some lawmakers who viewed the tape called it disturbing and deeply troubling. We have new video coming this hour. And young voters are splitting from Trump in a big way. There are new numbers for you tonight. Let's go out front. And good evening, I'm Erin Burnett. Out front tonight, breaking news, and this a major legal blow to Trump here. A grand jury in just the past few minutes, as we're coming to air, has refused to indict the New York Attorney General Letitia James. It's a big deal. This would have been the second indictment, right? Coming a week after a federal judge tossed the DOJ's mortgage fraud case against James and the Justice Department's case against former FBI Director James Comey. Now, this was all, of course, because of Lindsay Halligan, whether she had the right to be in the job. So the question is, were they going to go ahead and try James? Take two, they did. When her case was first tossed out, Attorney General Pam Bondi had vowed to take all available legal action, including this immediate appeal. And prosecutors can still bring another indictment against James, which, well, we'll see if that happens. She, of course, is one of Trump's top political targets.
The fascist and racist Attorney General of New York State, Letitia James.
You have an Attorney General who's a total stone cold crook, New York State, Letitia James, a total crook.
A crooked AG, Letitia James.
Letitia James from New York. This is another real Lola. There's no question about Letitia James, the corrupt Attorney General of New York.
Caitlin Polance is out front live in Washington with this breaking news. And Caitlin, this coming just a few moments ago. And Letitia James, the James Comey case is obviously a more challenging one for them, right? I mean, once Lindsay Halligan's tenure was ruled not okay, that one really goes away. But Letitia James could have had a second life or a third life. So what does tonight's decision mean by this grand jury?
It means that the Justice Department is in a fraught time for all of these cases they are trying to bring that Donald Trump so wants. The case against James Comey, the case against Letitia James, they both had been looked at previously by a judge. They had been approved by grand juries, and a judge had said, you know what, Lindsay Halligan is the U.S. attorney that Donald Trump has sent into Washington or into Alexandria, Virginia to lead these cases. She doesn't have that authority. So those cases were dismissed. This is take two to try and revive these cases. This one against Letitia James, the grand jury was assembled in a federal courthouse in Norfolk, Virginia today, and that grand jury looked at the possibility of mortgage fraud charges here. What we know from the previous version of this indictment is that Letitia James had made statements in a loan application about a second home in Norfolk, Virginia to save a couple $1,000s essentially over the life of her mortgage. This was a case that we now know the